Hola, ¿cómo está?
This is Riders of the Dawn. This is Jay.
This is Stu. We are going to talk about Return of the King today.
Return.
I guess finish off our 3 video series on Lord of the Rings. We talked about Fellowship of the Ring, some of the stuff, and we're talking about the adaptations.
Right.
They're going from the book to the movie, which I think is an interesting way to talk about it. Talked about Two Towers and some of the things they did really well, and I don't know if there's anything they did particularly badly. I probably would have ended with the actual spider attack, and ended on a low note.
But it ends in reasonable ways.
Yeah, it ends on a real high note, which was interesting, an interesting choice by Peter Jackson, and it's a good high note. Like, it feels good, and we don't have it polluted by the spider killing Frodo and ruining that. And maybe there would have been too much dissonance between those two resolutions because of the way they shot the movie.
Yeah.
The book was written, Isengard.
Yeah. Then
and Frodo and Sam.
Yeah.
So the book didn't have that dissonance going on, but it might have been a dissonant thing in the movie. That's something I considered. Yeah. Another thing they had in the Two Towers I didn't mention yesterday, they had the Elves show up at Helm's Deep, which doesn't happen in the book, and is basically they just show up so that one of them can die, and we can feel bad that an immortal elf died. And doesn't quite fit the tone of the relationship between men and elves. It just kind of doesn't fit. It's one of those things that I thought just kind of didn't fit. Like, why would the elves just show up? How did they know to show up? Why did they do that?
Because Gandalf's magic. Everything can be explained by magic.
Magic!
So, Return of the King. And we've talked about this already, that Tolkien didn't want to call the 3rd volume Return of the King because it spoils the ending.
Yeah, I think he wanted to call it War of the Ring. Yeah,
and what's interesting is that even in the first movie, you kind of get the sense that Aragorn is the King of Men. They allude to it. In the second movie, they talk about it a lot. And then, so by the 3rd movie, he shows up in Gondor and he's like, look, I'm king, but I'm going to show you that I'm king, that's good. So it was done well, but in the books, he never comes out and is like, yeah, I'm
He purposefully avoids that because he thought it would cause too much turmoil.
Yeah.
And in the end, it was like they he had to take his place as king the correct way, and it was it was interesting. Another interesting thing about the movies, in the movies, Aragorn is sort of, in a Christ-like way, somewhat unwilling to take upon his shoulders the mantle.
Yeah.
He's somewhat unwilling to be king. But in the books, he's completely ready.
Yeah.
He's basically a paragon in the books, because he's a 90-year-old dude who's been kicking ass for 90 years and is like, I'm ready to take back the throne of Gondor.
I just can't wait to be king.
He's ready. Like, he's ready to do it, and that's what he seeks. That's what he seeks to do. Another thing they do in the Return of the King at the beginning. So at the beginning, they put the spider attack from
the end of book 2 of Two Towers.
Yeah. So they put the spider attack from the book of Two Towers at the beginning of Return of the King, or towards the beginning of Return of the King, and they basically set it up so that you start having the one dissonant note you have at the end of Two Towers is like, you have Smeagol go like, follow me, and he like, and you're like, uh-oh, he's kind of evil. And so they just kind of hype up this tension between Sam and Gollum, and then Frodo says, get out here, Sam, and Sam cries, because that's what he does. And then he's like, no, I have to go back and say, and then the spider, whacks Frodo with the sting, proving that Sam was right all along. So that's like the first act. They made that like the first act of that part of the story. The first act of the other part of the story doesn't have that much tension in it, so that might be another reason why they chose to put that in there.
Yeah. And
that's basically the mustering of the Rohirrim to call the people of Rohan to go fight for Gondor. They have Pippin, I believe. Gandalf carries Pippin with him after he looks at the Palantir, and sees the Eye of Sauron, because Sauron has the Palantir, has another Palantir, and is using them. They have him like sneak up and light the beacons that calls forth, Rohan and this sort of stuff. It doesn't really happen in the book, but it's effective, and so I appreciated it actually.
I wonder. There's another part that's very different in the books, is where Aragorn kind of goes off on his own to like find this ghost army.
Oh yeah. So the one element is they give him Erodrin, the flame of, what's it called? They give him the reforged Narsil, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. Anduril, I think, like Flame of the West. Erodrin is Mountain Dew. So they give him the reforged sword in the book, and they hand it to him, and they're like, oh, the Ghost Army's not going to forget the blade of Isildur. In the book, Aragorn isn't carrying a normal sword in the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring. He's carrying Narsil the entire time, and it's a half of a sword. It's been broken, and it gets reforged when he reaches Rivendell. So he's always had it in the books, and it's a little significant thing. The way they did it in the movies in Fellowship of the Rings, they had Boromir look upon like this shrine dedicated to Narsil in Rivendell, which was actually a cool scene, and then we're going backwards for that minute. Yeah. But it sets up the tension of Boromir, where he's sort of jealous of Aragorn and things like that.
Jealousy of man.
Yeah, so yeah, they do the Ghost Army.
But they do this whole like reforging scene. Does that happen in Return of the King, or does that happen in Two Towers?
It originally happens. Oh yeah, well when they hand it to him, that happens at the beginning of Return of the King in the movies. Yeah. In the books, it
happens in the first book. Yeah.
So they have that. They go underground and have the Ghost Army, which is in the books.
But he doesn't go by himself, right? It's not like his lone quest, which is what it is.
He still goes with. In the book, he goes with Gimli and Legolas and the Rangers. He goes with Elrond's sons and the Rangers of the North, who all come down and although they're not very many, they're all descended from Numenor, and they're all like powerful, experienced, kind of ubermen, ubermensch, and like that. They're the ones who go through, and as they go through, they in the movie they added this. I like what they did in the movie, because it would have been hard to communicate what happened in the book the way Tolkien communicated it in the book. But they see the ghosts appear that had refused to refused Isildur's call, and so they attack him, and like there's this part where Aragorn like holds up the sword and blocks the ghost sword, and like the ghost is like super surprised, and he's like, you will suffer, they will suffer me, and he convinces the Ghost Army to go. And in the extended edition, the Ghost Army disappears and then reappears outside and decides that they're going to do it. In the book, they go through and they just have this spooky feeling that they're being followed, and they look around. When they leave, they reach this meeting stone that Isildur placed like in thousands of years before, whatever. And as they are traveling down the coast to Umbar, or not to Umbar, but to wherever the coastal city is, they look around and they see the Dunmen following. They see the men of Dunmer following. And it's like, it's this weird spookiness that they're being followed by ghosts.
Yeah. But I think it's good they made it a little more explicit for the movie.
Yeah, it would have been really hard to communicate that.
Yeah.
And people would have been kind of like, what? I don't understand why the ghosts are following.
And that's one of the things, like, in a book, you have a lot of room for uncertainty. In a movie, you don't have as much room.
If you just do
for
things,
subtle uncertainty.
Yeah, it's harder to be subtle in a movie. You have to tell the story visually.
Yeah.
And so I think Peter Jackson made a pretty good decision with that. And it's still scary and creepy, and it really sets up the resolution of the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, which is the sort of the close of the second act of the movie. We had this massive middle act where there's a huge battle outside of Gondor, and you have Denethor going mad. And the actor who played
that was awesome.
yeah, the actor who played Denethor was really good.
Yeah.
Really, really effective. And they did some really, really subtly effective things with him, where they had him eat in a semi-gross way. Like, he bites this tomato and, like, tomato juice squirts on his face. And that's actually a really subtle effect, because when you see somebody eat carelessly, it sends a message to you about them being arrogant and careless. So I thought that was actually like a very, very well thought out moment that Peter Jackson did.
I mean, it's if you don't care for yourself and you're the king, how can you care for your people?
Yeah, exactly. So
which is where Aragorn comes in, because he's like, "You're a steward, I'm the king.
Yeah,
I have to take my place."
Gandalf says, "You will not deny the return of the king, steward." You know, and it's there's lots of good moments. That I don't know, you know, if you hadn't cast the people that were in these movies, I don't know if the lines could have been delivered as convincingly.
Yeah.
Vigo, like, and I don't know, it might have been harder to make the movies if you had bigger name actors in the movies.
They were pretty big names.
Yeah, I mean, Sean Bean didn't become a huge guy until, like, Game of Thrones, though. He was big. I mean,
he was pretty big.
And Lord of the Rings is part of kind of what made him big. I've always loved Sean Bean. I thought he was a great character. Boromir would not have been the character he was without Sean Bean in that costume. Like, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have had the subtlety, like his method acting in some of those scenes, like in Lothlorien, where you could feel like the despair and the desperation in him. That would have been really hard to convey with a lesser actor. It just would have been hard to convey. And the same thing with, you know, Ian McKellen was Magneto.
Yeah.
And a good Magneto. I think the X-Men movies would have been really bad, actually, without Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in them.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, Ian McKellen and then Christopher Lee, like, those two were just such a perfect contrast to one another.
Yeah. Christopher Lee originally wanted to do Gandalf, but he felt he was too old for the part, and so he became Saruman instead.
Well, but I mean, Christopher Lee is the bad guy. Like, that is who Christopher Lee plays, and he does such a great job with it. You know, he's Dracula. Yeah,
especially since we don't see Sauron as Sauron has no personality. He's just this amorphous evil eye, is how he's always represented. He's a spiritual demon, and so the only real villain with a face is Sauron. So Christopher Lee's very, very effective at that. Now, in the beginning of the extended edition, they are going into, like, the destroyed Isengard, and you know, Gimli meets the hobbits, and they're, like, feasting and smoking, and it's a good little funny moment to sort of start the movie. Actually, no, we didn't even talk about the real start of the movie. So the real start of the movie is this montage of Gollum turning into Gollum.
That's right.
And I thought that was actually really effective, and dropped in a lot of critical backstory about Gollum, and helped you understand the twistedness of the character and the tragedy of Gollum, because that really sets up the final resolution where Gollum falls into the pit of doom, and takes the ring with him. And I thought that was a really good choice to start the movie off. It's not, you don't have to do everything exactly like the book. We talked about this before. It's a different medium. You need to write in the medium that you're writing in. And I thought that was a really, really effective way to start the movie. It starts it with tension. It starts it with what will create the final resolution of the grand conflict to destroy the ring.
And because it's the first, because when you finally do come back to Gollum and Sam and Frodo, that's when the Spider Queen happens.
Yeah.
You know, so you see like
Yeah, you see that whole first act.
that whole first act is really revolving around Gollum.
And like his character, and then so it's really good choice to start the movie with that. But then you go to Isengard. Now in the extended edition, you see Wormtongue. You see Saruman mistreat Wormtongue, and Wormtongue stabs him and kills him. And then Legolas or someone shoots Wormtongue with an arrow, and they both die. That's not the real ending. That's not the real ending of the book.
And so the reason, and we've been waiting to talk about this. This has really been the part that we wanted to talk about, which is the end of the book.
Yes.
Do we want to talk?
Is there anything else we want to talk about before we talk about the end?
I'm trying to think.
I'll talk about one difference between the special editions, which are the uncut director's editions, and the theatrical versions. The third act, in which Frodo and Sam move across Mordor, is far too short in the theatrical release. It makes you feel like they just walk across Mordor, and Mordor is tiny. Because they show a view of Mordor from like a really wide angle, and then they're walking across it in orc armor, and then they're at Mount Doom. The extended edition, they add like 20-25 minutes of them walking across Mordor and struggling against the power of the ring, and that to me adds way more tension to the final resolution and is necessary for it to be truly effective. I felt the theatrical edition was not effective in the third act. It was effective, but compared to the director's cut, it wasn't effective compared to it. That was a really, really important difference between those two versions of the movie. And then there's a really long ending that doesn't contain the real ending. Let's talk about the real ending.
All right,
we've been waiting to talk about this and why it's important.
Okay. So, Saruman and Wormtongue don't die in the tower. Like in the movie.
Treebeard lets him go.
Yeah, he lets them go
because he feels sorry for them and he's bored.
Yeah.
So when they come back through after destroying the ring, they're like, "Where's Saruman?" And Treebeard's like, "Oh, I couldn't bear to keep him locked up. I can't bear to see a creature caged." And they're like, and Gandalf is like, "Oh, so it is doomed," Little foreshadowing.
Yeah. So, and before we even get there, there's a criticism that I've always had, which is they burn the ring in the fires of Mount Doom, and then the mountain is crumbling, and they're like, okay, this is the end, finally rest, and then eagles just come and swoop them away, right?
Yeah.
And the question I've always had when that happened was like, why didn't they just get the eagles to come get them there in the first place?
Yeah, that's always something that people talk about, and the answer was that the eagles actually couldn't fly in until the Nazgul were dead, because the Nazgul had the flying dragon beasts that the Nazgul had. It's not like the eagles could have flown in. Mordor was protected from the air, which you see the eagles fighting with the Nazgul, and then when the ring's destroyed, you see, or when the ring is at Mount Doom, you see the Nazgul fly away from the eagles in an attempt to go snatch the ring at one last gasp. Sauron realizes that the ring is at Mount Doom, and then when he gets cast into it, they fall out of the sky.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah. So there's people like, why didn't the eagles just take it there? It's like, well, the eagles would have gotten wrecked by the dragon beast and the Nazgul. So of course they didn't do it. And also the eagles, it's not their concern. The same thing with the elves. The elves are leaving Middle Earth. It's not their concern. The eagles live on top of the mountains. They're beasts. It's really not their concern what men do. Like, Sauron can't have dominion over eagles. The eagles of Manwë are above Sauron. Anyway, so yeah, there's that.
All right,
that's my ending. My take on it. Real ending. So the real ending is Saruman goes back to the Shire and messes it all up. That's the real ending of the book. And J.R.R. Tolkien actually did a very, very good job setting that up in the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring, where you see these sort of half-orc men in Bree, and people talk about spies of the enemy and this and that, and they find the Longbottom Leaf in Isengard, that Isengard has been trading with the Shire secretly, and finally Saruman comes down there and takes over the Shire. cuts down the trees.
And what's interesting, and again, because of how time has to work on the screen, there's not this sense of how long the journey has to take for them to get home, to finally get back to the Shire. Because in that time it takes them to get back to the Shire, that's where Saruman has already gotten there and already done his business.
So it takes months to do it.
Yeah, it's not just like, oh, a Treebeard let him go and then like instantly he destroys the Shire. It takes a long time, and
it's hard to convey that on screen. It's a good point.
And the hobbits they're jovial. They live in basically paradise. You know, this beautiful place that has all this bounty.
It's merry old England, as Michael Moorcock called it. The hobbits live in merry old England.
So they when they finally get back there, it's Sam and Pippin and Merry, and they're so obviously changed. How could you not be changed after a journey like this? Such an epic. And when they get there, all the hobbits they're different.
Yeah, they're all
the same.
They've grown, and then they look at their friends when they come back, and they're above them now. Like they look at them and they're like, no. It's like, oh, we're gonna have the sheriffs escort you, and it's like, you can walk with us if you want.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna let you arrest us.
Yeah.
And the sheriffs are like, okay, because like the hobbits have gained so much more confidence and strength. The four main hobbits that went on the journey have grown so much that like. And Tolkien does this, and so I will give you my analysis of it. Maybe we should have done a whole podcast or something. But okay, so when you come back, they find that the trees have been cut down, and instead of the quaint hobbit holes, they built all kinds of buildings of brick that issue smoke and stuff like that. And that represents Tolkien's dislike of industrialization and his dislike of modernity. Tolkien was anti-modern. He was the Catholic anti-modern guy. And he was also an anarchist. So what happens is that the hobbits live in anarchist society.
Yeah.
There's no hobbit government. There are like these hobbit leaders, sort of. People give respect to like, the old Took. But no one tells anyone what to do.
No governance.
People cooperate with each other out of mutual benefit, mutual appreciation, mutual respect, mutual love, relationships with one another.
It's a voluntarist utopia.
It's a voluntarist utopia, and you have to understand Tolkien's political ideology to understand why that worked. And then at the same time, that's why the hobbits are so concerned with genealogies, because they're all related to each other, and that's part of how their bonds exist.
Yeah.
And when you get rid of the bonds of family, it's harder to be peaceful.
Yeah.
So they come back, and Saruman has established a government. There's sheriffs who are locking gates and not letting travelers in, who are trying to arrest the four hobbits. Arresting a hobbit, killing another hobbit, that's insane. You would never harm another person, is what Merry, Pippin, Sam, and Frodo are so upset about. So they get to this locked gate, and they're like, hey, let us through. And they're like, we have orders from Sharky, you don't let anyone through. And they're like, right then, let's go over. And they just climb over the gate and unlock it. And the little hobbit sheriffs are just completely terrified by the situation. They're like, who are these warrior hobbits? And it signifies on the other side this huge growth that the hobbits are no longer.
There's nothing timid about them.
There's nothing timid about them, and these four warriors return and rally the Shire to overthrow the government. I love that.
I love it.
I friggin' love that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And not only that, and they give you a little tiny bit of this in the movie, but there's when Sam gets back and he gets there's this little romance scene where he gets to go. Does that hobbit even have a name? I don't know. Rosie. Okay.
Rosie. And she's in the book, and Sam likes her.
Yeah.
And they have a bunch of babies, and he names them all after his friends, and it's cute. And he becomes the mayor of Hobbiton. Which is also kind of Tolkien's thing that's like, you don't have to be, you need to be wise. You don't have to be like even the most humble person can learn to be wise and powerful and to be a good leader. And that's what, that's who Sam becomes. He's elected mayor of Hobbiton like 7 times and lives to a ripe old age. And in the books, he gives the Red Book of Westmarch, which is the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, this book about the hobbits. He gives it to his daughter and her husband for safekeeping, and then he goes to the sea and travels, takes the last ship that leaves Middle Earth and goes over to the Undying Lands, because he was a ring bearer, and all the people who bore the power of the ring are essentially immortal because of the way the power has touched them, and he needs a place to rest, just like Frodo does.
Yeah.
And that's
God, it's so brutal.
Yeah, it was a really good ending, like a really kind of touching ending to the whole thing. And the movie had a really kind of like very, very good sad ending, which is where they all leave Middle Earth, and the hobbits are super sad to see their friend go. But
and the audience is sad too. It's
the
it's a
audience
very
is
sad
way
movie.
sad. It's a great sad ending, and it's part of what makes it good. You have this big, in the movie you have this big happy ending, so anyway, the real ending I prefer.
Yeah.
Because it really shows the growth and shows that the hobbits, which we view as kind of these ignorant little hicks, are strong and able to be brave and powerful for themselves. And I feel like the movie is less because of that. However, I do understand why Peter Jackson cut it out, partly because of its incredible anarchist overtones. Might upset some audience members, right?
And not only that, it destroys the 3-act structure.
And that's why books are usually, people will say the book is better than the movie, is it doesn't have to adhere to that level of structure. And this is, we talked a lot of, whenever we talk about screenplays, we talk about this save the cat, plot point maneuvering, and 3-act structure. Lord of the Rings doesn't have that. It doesn't have that. Good books don't have to have that. It's like, I don't know. I get why Peter Jackson cut it out, for the political reasons, and also because it from an audience perspective, it might just wreck the ending. Where they're like, oh, but we wanted them to be, to have victory and come back home to where they can rest and have the Shire be saved. We have saved the Shire, but not for me. It was a sad moment. Well, I get that. And then that allows you to finally end on that sad moment that sort of ties it all up. And it's still 30 minutes plus of ending, of them like Frodo recovering, and then Aragorn getting married or something, and then they finally get back to the Shire.
Boromir's spooky ghost.
When they're burning the body of Saruman and the ghosts, the Force ghosts. Wait,
hold on.
Wrong Return movie. All right, we're out of time.
We loved the movies.
I really enjoyed the movies. I wanted my anarchist conclusion that tied the whole thing together, that governments are evil, and that the hobbits grew up and threw off the bonds of government, and that the bonds of government enslaved them and did not make them prosperous. And there's always this thing where it's like, we're taking all this stuff to make you more prosperous. We're doing this to make you more prosperous. And of course it doesn't, because government can't make people prosperous.
Oh, man.
Government can only take wealth, it cannot create it. And that is by definition, because taxation comes from the interchange of production. It comes from wealth. The government cannot produce wealth itself. It can only take it from other people. That's our political rant.
That is our political rant for today. So this has been Riders of the Dawn. This is Jay. You can find me at MatthewJWellman.com.
This is Stu. You can find me at DavidVStewart.com. And we will see you next time.
Later.